Chapter 1. The dinner table. The first time I saw her name light up on his phone, we were standing in our kitchen. It was a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cinematic. Just leftover lasagna, a sink full of dishes, and my husband smiling at a text. He turned slightly away from me. I remember wiping my hands on a dish towel and telling myself not to be that woman, not the suspicious one. Not the insecure one. He caught me looking. "It's just Emily," he said, casual, like it was obvious. "She's just a friend." Just a friend. I nodded. I even smiled. Because that's what wives do when they don't want to look crazy, but something in my stomach tightened. My name is Claire. I'm 38 years old. Dark hair, shoulder length, usually pulled back when I'm cooking. Born and raised in Ohio. I met Daniel when I was 23, at a 4th of July barbecue. He had that steady, dependable energy that made you feel safe. He looked at me like I was the only person in the world. For 15 years, I believed I was. The family dinner was my idea. His parents were in town, and my sister-in-law had just announced she was pregnant. It felt like the right time to bring everyone together. I spent 2 days preparing: rosemary chicken, garlic mashed potatoes, fresh green beans with almonds, and my famous peach cobbler. I wore a navy dress. Simple. Elegant. Daniel said I looked beautiful. He kissed my cheek in front of his mother, and for a second, I felt silly for ever doubting him. The house filled with noise around 6 o'clock. His father's booming laugh. His mother rearranging my table settings without asking. My brother-in-law pouring bourbon before anyone had even sat down, and then she walked in, Emily. I had seen her once before. At a company Christmas party. Blonde. Polished. Confident in a way that felt practiced. Daniel had told me she worked in marketing. "She's just a friend," he had said back then, too. She smiled when she saw me. "Oh my God, Claire. I've heard so much about you." That sentence. "I've heard so much about you." I smiled back. Because what else was I supposed to do? "You too," I said, even though I hadn't. Dinner started normally. Plates passed. Compliments about the food. Daniel sitting at the head of the table like he always did. Emily sat 2 seats down from him, close enough that I watched the way he leaned slightly in her direction when she spoke. The way she touched his arm when she laughed. Small things you could almost convince yourself were innocent. Halfway through dinner, my mother-in-law asked how Daniel's big client pitch had gone. Before Daniel could answer, Emily jumped in. "Oh, he was incredible," she said, smiling at him. "I don't know what we would have done without him." There was something intimate in her tone. Something that didn't belong at my dining table. I looked at Daniel. He looked pleased. Proud, comfortable. That tightness in my stomach twisted. Later, as dessert was being served, my sister-in-law asked how Daniel and I were doing. 15 years, she said. "What's the secret?" Daniel laughed, and then he said it. "We're solid. Claire knows I'd never do anything to hurt her. Right, babe?" The table chuckled, all eyes turned to me, and that's when Emily's phone buzzed. Daniel's eyes dropped to it instantly. A reflex. A recognition that I saw it, and suddenly I wasn't imagining things anymore. The room felt warmer. Louder. Like the air had thickened. I stood up slowly. "I actually have something to show everyone," I said. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. Daniel looked confused. "Claire, what are you?" I walked to the kitchen counter. 3 days earlier, while he was in the shower, I had opened the credit card statement. I wasn't proud of it, but intuition doesn't come from nowhere. There they were. Hotel charges. 2 different weekends. A boutique hotel downtown, the same nights he told me he had late strategy meetings. I printed them. I didn't know why. Maybe I did. I walked back into the dining room holding the papers. Daniel's face changed the second he saw them. "Claire," he warned quietly. My mother-in-law frowned. "What is this?" I looked directly at my husband. "At our family dinner," I said, steady and clear, "my husband told me she's just a friend." I placed the hotel receipts in the center of the table. "So can someone explain why just a friend requires 2 weekends at the Crescent Hotel?" Silence, not the polite kind, the suffocating kind. Emily's face drained of color. Daniel stood up abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You're overreacting." Overreacting. I had expected denial. What I hadn't expected was the calm that washed over me, because for the first time in months, I wasn't doubting myself. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was done. And as I looked around the table, at his stunned parents, at my sister-in-law frozen mid-bite, at the woman who thought she could sit in my home and play pretend, I realized something. This wasn't the beginning of the end, it was the moment I took control. Chapter 2. The receipts. No one moved. The only sound in the room was the soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint clink of my mother-in-law setting her fork down too carefully. Daniel didn't look at the receipts, that he looked at me, like I had betrayed him. This is insane, he said, forcing out a laugh that didn't land. You went through my statements? I didn't blink. Answer the question. Emily shifted in her chair. She looked smaller now. Less polished. Her hands folded tightly in her lap like a child waiting for a principal to speak. His father cleared his throat. Daniel? That was the thing about public exposure, that it removes the luxury of private lies. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. It's not what it looks like. There it was, the oldest line in the book. That I tilted my head slightly. Okay, I said calmly. What does it look like? His jaw tightened. Emily finally spoke. Claire, I promise, nothing inappropriate happened. Nothing inappropriate. 2 weekends at the Crescent Hotel. A boutique place known for couples packages and rooftop champagne service. Then why not tell me? I asked. My voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Why lie about late meetings? Daniel exhaled sharply. Because I knew you'd react like this. Like what? Like a woman holding printed proof in her hands. My sister-in-law pushed her chair back slowly. Wait, were you two alone there? Silence again, and that silence said more than anything else could. I reached for one of the pages and slid it closer to his mother. Look at the dates, I said. That weekend in March? He told me he was in Chicago for a conference. His mother's face crumpled slightly. Daniel, it was a work retreat, he snapped. At a romantic hotel downtown? I asked, that he didn't answer. Instead, he turned it around. This is embarrassing, Claire. You're humiliating me in front of my family. Humiliating him, the irony almost made me laugh. That I leaned forward slightly, meeting his eyes. You humiliated me the moment you thought I'd never find out. The room went completely still. Emily stood abruptly. I should go. No, I said firmly. She froze. That if I was going to burn down my illusion of a marriage, I wasn't going to let her walk out untouched by the truth. You don't get to sit at my table, eat my food, smile on my face, and then leave when it gets uncomfortable. Her eyes filled with tears. Good. Daniel stepped toward me. Claire, enough. I stepped back, and for the first time in 15 years, I saw him clearly, not as the man I fell in love with at 23, not as the steady husband, but as someone cornered, desperate, calculating. I didn't sleep with her, he said finally. The words dropped heavily into the room. That it wasn't the denial I expected. Not I would never, not I love you. Just a technical clarification. That I studied him carefully. Then why 2 weekends? He hesitated. That hesitation was louder than a confession. Emily covered her face with her hands, and that's when it clicked. This wasn't new, this wasn't spontaneous, this had history. That I felt something shift inside me. Not heartbreak, clarity. I've already called a lawyer, I said quietly. That got everyone's attention. Daniel's head snapped toward me. You what? I called a lawyer yesterday. I hadn't told anyone that part, not even myself fully, but after seeing the first receipt, something inside me had hardened. That I wasn't going to beg, that I wasn't going to compete, that I wasn't going to cry at the table. His father stood slowly. Son, is there something you need to tell us? Daniel looked trapped now, and suddenly, I realized something powerful. The truth doesn't need theatrics. That it just needs timing. That I walked to the sideboard and picked up my phone. 3 taps. That I mirrored the screen to the TV mounted in the living room, visible from the dining table. That a forwarded email thread, hotel confirmations. 2 guests, Daniel Carter, Emily Lawson. Her sharp inhale echoed in the quiet house. You told me I was imagining things, I said softly. You said I was insecure. He looked pale. That I wasn't yelling. That I didn't have to, because the evidence was speaking for me. His mother began to cry quietly. His brother muttered, Jesus, man. And Daniel, he looked at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't, because I didn't recognize myself either. That I wasn't shaking, that I wasn't begging, that I wasn't breaking, that I was documenting. You could have told me the truth, I said finally. Even if it hurt. I would have respected that. Emily grabbed her purse. I never meant to, I cut her off gently. You meant to. Silence. Daniel stepped forward again, lowering his voice. Claire. We can fix this. Fix, such a casual word for demolition that I looked around the table one last time, the half-eaten cobbler, the bourbon glasses, the life I had carefully built, and then I looked back at him. No, I said calmly. We can't. And for the first time all night, I saw fear in his eyes, not fear of losing me, fear of losing control, because he knew something now. The woman he thought would stay quiet was already 3 steps ahead. Chapter 3. The silence. No one leaves a dinner table the same way they sat down. By the time Daniel's parents gathered their coats, the air in the house felt permanently altered, like something sacred had been broken and would never quite fit back together. His mother wouldn't look at me, not because she was angry, because she was ashamed of him. His father shook my hand before walking out, shook my hand. I'm sorry, he said quietly, not for the scene, for his son. Emily slipped out without another word. The front door clicked shut behind her, soft but final, and then it was just us. The plates were still on the table. Candles still burning. The peach cobbler half-eaten. 15 years of marriage sitting in silence between us. Daniel paced once across the dining room, then back again. You blindsided me, he said. That I actually laughed. Blindsided? You booked hotel rooms, I replied calmly. You blindsided yourself. He stopped pacing. His voice shifted, softer now. It wasn't serious. That sentence hurt more than I expected, not because it was romantic, but because it meant I had been risked for something casual, disposable. You risked our marriage for something that wasn't serious? I asked. That he didn't answer. Instead, he did what men like Daniel do when they feel cornered. That he minimized. It was emotional. We talked. We connected. It didn't go as far as you think. Emotional, that word landed differently. Physical betrayal shatters trust, emotional betrayal erases intimacy. You told her things you stopped telling me, I said quietly. That it wasn't a question. That he didn't deny it. That I walked to the kitchen sink and began rinsing plates. The normalcy of the action almost felt absurd. That he followed me. Claire. Please. We can fix this. I'll cut contact. I'll go to counseling. Counseling, now, after hotel reservations, after lies, after bringing her into my home. You invited her here, I said, turning off the water slowly. To my table. She's part of the team. No, I said firmly. She was part of your secret. He ran both hands through his hair again, pacing tighter now. You didn't have to humiliate me. There it was again, his humiliation, not my betrayal. That I dried my hands carefully and faced him. I didn't humiliate you, I said evenly. I revealed you. He stared at me, like he was searching for the woman who would eventually soften, cry, collapse, but something inside me had crystallized. I already spoke to an attorney, I continued. I didn't just call. I met with her. His face shifted. A flicker of real concern. What did you tell her? The truth. And what does that mean? It means I know exactly what our assets look like. I know what the house is worth. I know what your retirement accounts hold. He swallowed. You think I'd leave you with nothing? No, I said calmly. I think you assumed I'd never leave. That hit him, because it was true. Daniel always believed stability equaled permanence. That he thought because I was steady, I was stuck. I made a mistake, he said quietly. That I looked at him for a long moment. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary, I replied. A mistake is buying the wrong birthday gift. 2 weekends in a hotel is a decision. Silence again. That he sank into a chair at the kitchen island. For the first time all night, he looked tired, not guilty, tired. When did you stop loving me? He asked suddenly. The question startled me, because I hadn't stopped loving him. That was the tragedy. I didn't, I said honestly. You stopped respecting me. That landed heavier than shouting ever could. He looked down at his hands. I felt invisible, he admitted, invisible. That I almost smiled at the irony. I cooked your meals, I said softly. I supported your promotions. I hosted your family. I defended you when you worked late. If you felt invisible, Daniel, you were looking in the wrong direction. He didn't argue, and in that quiet, something irreversible settled between us. That I walked upstairs to our bedroom, our room, the bed we bought after our 5th anniversary, the framed beach photo from North Carolina. That I opened my closet and pulled out a suitcase. That he followed me halfway up the stairs. Where are you going? I'm not leaving, I said. You are. That stopped him cold. You can't just kick me out. I can, I said evenly. Legally, I can't change the locks yet. But tonight? You can sleep somewhere else. He stared at me. You're serious? Yes. He hesitated, waiting for me to waver that I didn't, because here's the thing about betrayal: the first wave is pain, the second wave is clarity, and clarity is terrifying to the person who benefited from your confusion. That he packed a small bag silently. No yelling. No smashing doors, just quiet defeat. When he reached the front door, he paused. Are you really ending 15 years like this? I looked at him, at the man I once thought I'd grow old beside. You ended it when you chose her, I said gently. I just acknowledged it. The door closed behind him, and for the first time that night, I let myself breathe. The house was quiet, not suffocating, just still. That I walked back into the dining room. The receipts were still on the table, proof, validation, power. That I gathered them carefully and placed them in a folder. Tomorrow, I would email my lawyer. Tonight, I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to cry, not because I doubted my decision, but because grieving the version of your life you believed in deserves acknowledgement. After 5 minutes, I stood up, washed the dishes, blew out the candles, and went to bed alone, not abandoned, not rejected, not humiliated, awake. Chapter 4. The lawyer. The next morning, the house felt unfamiliar, not because anything had physically changed, but because Daniel wasn't there. No shower running at 6:30 No coffee brewing too strong. No half-read newspaper folded on the counter, just quiet. I stood in the kitchen, dark hair loose around my shoulders, staring at the empty chair at the head of the table. It's strange how quickly a life can split into before and after. Before the receipts, after the receipts. My phone buzzed at 8:12 a.m. Daniel. I let it go to voicemail, then another message, and another. I didn't listen. Instead, I opened my laptop and pulled up the email from my attorney, Margaret Hale. Calm, direct, unimpressed by drama. We had met 2 days before the dinner. I remember sitting across from her in a glass-walled office downtown, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee I never drank. What outcome do you want? She had asked me, not, what happened? Not, are you sure? Outcome, that word had steadied me. I want fairness, I had said. She nodded once. Fairness requires preparation. Now, sitting alone at my kitchen table, I forwarded her the hotel confirmations, subject line, documentation. Within 20 minutes, she called. I received the emails, she said, voice level. Are you safe? Yes. Is he in the home? No. A pause. That simplifies things. I almost smiled. Margaret didn't deal in emotion, she dealt in leverage. Given the length of the marriage, she continued, and the financial structure you described, you're entitled to a significant portion of the shared assets. Entitled, that word felt foreign. I had never thought in terms of entitlement. I thought in terms of partnership, sacrifice, support. But partnership requires honesty, and Daniel had converted ours into deception. I don't want revenge, I said quietly. Good, Margaret replied. Revenge is expensive. Strategy is efficient. Strategy, that was what this was now. She laid it out clearly. File first, document everything, freeze joint discretionary spending, secure copies of retirement accounts, and most importantly, do not negotiate emotionally. After the call ended, I walked upstairs and opened the safe in our closet. Inside were passports, property documents, investment summaries. I took photos of everything. Not because I didn't trust the system, but because I had learned something vital the night before: trust without verification is vulnerability. Around noon, Daniel showed up. I saw his car pull into the driveway through the living room window. For a moment, my heart reacted out of habit. Familiar sound, familiar rhythm. But habits are not reasons. He knocked, not used his key. Knocked. I opened the door but didn't step aside. His eyes scanned my face like he was searching for softness. Can we talk? He asked. We are talking. He sighed. Not like this. There is no like this anymore. He looked exhausted. Shirt wrinkled. Same one from last night. I didn't sleep, he admitted. I held his gaze evenly. Neither did I. A beat of silence passed. I ended it, he said quickly. With Emily. This morning. I felt nothing. No relief. No jealousy, just distance. You should have ended it before it started. He flinched. I made a mistake, he repeated, and there it was again, that word. Mistake. As if betrayal was an accident that slipped on a wet floor. I met with a lawyer, I said calmly. His posture changed. You're actually filing? Yes. He stepped closer. Claire, please. 15 years. I know exactly how long it's been. You're going to throw that away? No, I replied softly. You did. That finally silenced him. For a long moment, we just stood there, two people in the doorway of a house that no longer belonged to both of us in the same way. What do you want? He asked quietly. The question lingered in the space between us. What did I want? I wanted honesty without surveillance, that I wanted loyalty without proof, that I wanted the version of him who would have never risked losing me. But that version didn't exist anymore. So instead, I answered with clarity. I want peace, I said. And I want what's legally mine. He looked down. You're serious about this? Yes. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. I didn't think you'd actually leave. There it was, the truth beneath everything, that he thought I'd cry, threaten, eventually forgive, because I always had, but this time, there were receipts, not just from a hotel, but from years of small dismissals, late nights unexplained, conversations cut short, affection reduced to routine. I'm not leaving, I corrected gently. I'm staying. In my integrity. You're the one who stepped outside the marriage. His eyes filled, not dramatically, just realization, or different. He said, no, I replied. I'm clear. And clarity looks like distance to someone who benefited from your doubt. That he nodded slowly. So what happens now? Margaret will send paperwork, I said evenly. We'll divide assets. We'll sell the house. That made him look up sharply. Sell the house? Yes. This is our home. It was, I corrected. Silence again. That he inhaled deeply, like he wanted to argue, then something in his face softened. Not manipulation this time, acceptance. I never thought you'd be the one to walk away, he said quietly. I didn't either. That was the honest part, but betrayal doesn't just expose secrets. That it exposes strength. That he stepped back from the doorway. I'll wait for the paperwork, he said. That I nodded, and as he turned to leave, he paused one last time. I did love you, he said. That I believed him, and somehow, that made it sadder. I loved you too, I replied, past tense. The door closed gently behind him. That no shouting. That no drama. Just consequence. That I locked it this time, not out of anger, but because some chapters don't deserve re-entry. Upstairs, I opened my laptop and began drafting a new budget. That a new plan. That a new life, and for the first time since that dinner, I didn't feel humiliated. That I felt powerful. Chapter 5, The Aftermath. 3 months later, I hosted another dinner, same dining room, same table, different air. The house was staged for sale by then. Neutral throw pillows, carefully placed orchids, the faint scent of vanilla diffusers instead of rosemary chicken. The family photos had been taken down. The beach picture from North Carolina now sat wrapped in newspaper in the hallway closet. But this dinner wasn't about celebration. That it was about closure. Daniel had signed the settlement agreement 2 weeks earlier. Margaret had done exactly what she promised. Efficient, strategic, unemotional. The house would be sold. Retirement accounts divided. Investments split cleanly. No dramatic courtroom battle. No screaming matches, just ink drying on paper. Fairness requires preparation, and preparation had given me peace. That I invited only a few people this time. My sister, my closest friend Rachel, and surprisingly, Daniel's mother. When she texted asking if we could talk, I hesitated, but betrayal fractures more than a marriage. It fractures families, and I had loved his mother for 15 years. She arrived first, smaller somehow. Quieter. She hugged me at the door and held on a second longer than usual. I'm proud of you, she whispered. That I didn't expect that. I never raised him to treat a woman like that, she added, her voice breaking slightly. I know, I said gently, and I meant it. This wasn't about villains and saints. That it was about choices. That we sat at the table. The same table where everything had unraveled, only this time, there were no secrets. Rachel poured wine. My sister squeezed my hand under the table, and for the first time since that night, I told the full story out loud, not the dramatic version, not the angry one. Just the truth, how I saw the phone light up, how I printed the receipts, how calm I felt when I placed them down. Rachel shook her head slowly. I don't think I could have done that. Yes, you could, I said quietly, because here's what no one tells you about moments like that. Strength doesn't arrive with fireworks. That it arrives when your fear finally gets tired of being ignored. A week after Daniel moved into his apartment, Emily left the company. That I didn't ask for details. That I didn't need to. Consequences have a way of unfolding without your supervision. The house sold faster than expected. A young couple bought it, newly married. Optimistic. Full of plans. The day I handed over the keys, I walked through each room one last time. the kitchen where I saw that first message, the dining room where silence changed everything, the bedroom where I packed his suitcase, that I didn't feel rage, that I didn't even feel sadness the way I thought I would, that I felt gratitude. Because that house had held two versions of me, the woman who doubted her instincts, and the woman who trusted them. Only one of them was leaving, that I moved into a smaller place across town, white walls, big windows. No shared history. The first night there, I ordered takeout and sat cross-legged on the floor, dark hair messy from unpacking boxes, that an old dining table that an framed photos, just quiet. But this quiet was different, that it wasn't suffocating, that it was spacious. Daniel called once after the divorce finalized, that I let it ring. Then he texted, "I never meant to lose you." I stared at the message for a long time, then I typed back, "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." And that was the last conversation we had. 6 months later, I ran into him at a grocery store, out of all places. That he looked older, not dramatically, just worn. We stood awkwardly near the produce section. "How are you?" he asked. "Good," I said honestly, because I was, not in the Instagram filter way, but in the grounded, sleeping through the night way. That he nodded slowly. "You look different." I smiled faintly. "I am." There was no bitterness in my voice, just truth. As I walked away, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry at Emily, that I wasn't even angry at Daniel anymore. They had forced a reckoning, and reckoning leads to realignment. A year after the dinner, I hosted one more gathering, this time in my new home. Smaller table, fewer chairs, better boundaries. Rachel toasted her glass. "To Claire," she said, grinning. "For not accepting, just a friend." Everyone laughed, and I did too, because that sentence, the one meant to dismiss me, to calm me, to make me question myself, had become the catalyst. At our family dinner, my husband said, "She's just a friend." And I showed the hotel receipts, but what I really showed was that I was not a woman who needed to be convinced of what she could already see. Trust is fragile. Self-respect isn't, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can place on a dinner table is the truth, not screaming, not begging, not revenge, just proof. If you had told me 2 years ago that my marriage would end over printed receipts and a calm voice, I would have said you were dramatic, but endings rarely look the way we expect. Sometimes they look like peach cobbler half-eaten, like bourbon glasses untouched, like a woman with dark hair standing at the head of her own table, choosing herself in front of everyone. And if I'm honest, that was the night I stopped being someone's wife and started being fully myself.